right? So when you're building your private practice, there are multiple areas that you need to cover. There are lots of things that you have to do. Three key areas that I'm always talking about are marketing, management and quality clinical care, right? So those three areas are key. So marketing, right? When you're developing a private practice, you want to develop your client avatar, which is your ideal client, right? Or 2 or 3 client avatars. How do you develop your ideal client? You think of who you want to work with, who you have enjoyed working with the most, and you expand from there. So if you know that you most enjoy working with boys between 6 and 12 years old who have some behavioral issues, you will think about those clients and you'll think about all of the things about them that you can, and you'll create that into your client avatar. So you can think about, those boys that I really loved working with, what was their socioeconomic status? What were their clinical issues? What are, are there any potential religious, racial, ethnic things that I need to think about in terms of the group that I want to serve? Are there issues around gender? Are you interested in working with LGBTQ clients or non-binary folk? Think about those things. Consider all of the areas, all the demographics of this client base. Just by thinking of those 2 clients that you enjoyed working with the most, and you can develop your client avatar around that. If you don't have clients that you really enjoyed working with, think about who you want to work with, right? So when you're doing your sessions now, or you're meeting with clients now at your workplace, what makes you say, oh, I wish I could work with somebody who, what's the who, right? What's the who that you're looking for? And that can help you to develop your client avatar. Again, your ideal client. You can have 1, 2, or 3. I wouldn't expand that. And there's lots of reasons why, but I wouldn't go you're not a catch-all be-all, because when you're a catch-all be-all, your voice is not clear enough to any one particular group, and you need a clear voice to speak directly to the group that you want to work with. Other things to think about in terms of marketing, right? So you're going to list yourself on a minimum of 2 advertising sites. I actually recommend 3 when I start training people on how to do this, but a minimum of 2. So you're thinking about psychologytoday.com, you're thinking about therapyforblackgirls.com, you're thinking about therapyforblackmen.org, you might be thinking about openpathcollective.org. There are so many different advertising sites, but you want to think about, putting yourself on at least 2. Psychology Today, which is a very general and very well-known one, is one that you should definitely consider. And then even with those things, there are some tricks of the trade, right? So with Psychology Today, you're allowed to have up to 3 or 4, I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but 3 or 4 different zip codes that you're pulling from. So you want to make sure that those zip codes all have your ideal client. You want to make sure that you go in, you use one of those websites, and I have one that I can send if anyone wants one, that tells you what group resides in this zip code in the state that you're licensed in. And that's how you can think about setting up your Psychology Today and some of these other sites to make sure that you're pulling from a broad market, a broad reach, right? Broad reach of your individual client avatar, okay? So, and then the management component. So with management, you want to have an electronic health record system, right? I don't think you want pen and paper, which is very time consuming. You end up writing more. You have to keep those records for, I believe it's 6 or 7 years for adults. And until several years after a child is 18, if your clients are children. So an electronic health record system, right? So you're thinking about the therapy notes, you're thinking about Simple Practice, you're thinking about those sorts of sites where you can have an EHR that's reliable, that's HIPAA compliant, that's protected. You're thinking about a scheduling system, right? So what sort of scheduling system do you want? One where you don't have to do a lot of work, okay? So I'll tell you, I used to spend, I don't know how many hours a week when I first started, speaking with clients over the phone, setting up their session time. Then if they needed a change, they'd call me and I'd have to, take the time to figure out a change with them. And when you're busy, when you have clients that you're seeing, and if you have a life at all outside of working you don't have time to spend, 2, 3, 4 hours a week working on client schedules. So you want a scheduling system where clients can self-schedule, and you want to also be able to allow them to reschedule themselves up to a certain amount of hours before the session, right? Because you're not losing money on reschedules, but something that's simple where you're not putting in that work, it's extra work. You want to cut back on work. In terms of management, you want a billing system, right? So there are sites that offer billing systems like MyAbility, right, where you can do your own billing, or some of the other sites like simplepractice.com has billing built in. So you have the electronic health record system, a client self-scheduling system, and a billing system all in Simple Practice. Therapy Notes, you have the same thing. You have billing system, scheduling system, and electronic health record. So you want to think about using systems that make this all a lot easier for you, okay? But that's what you need in terms of management. EHR system, scheduling, and billing. Another thing to think about in terms of the management aspect of your practice, getting insurance, getting malpractice insurance, right? So sites like hpso.com or healthcare providers services organization.com, National Association of Social Workers, and there are plenty of others offer insurance to private practitioners. The cost is actually under about $200 a month. In general, the cost is under $200 a month. It's even some of them are $100 a month. And your coverage, you want to have $5 million max, $1 million per incident as the coverage amount that you have. Okay. So I'm so sorry. I just have to scroll over for a bit. Okay. So having your liability insurance is very important. If I were starting a brand new private practice, that's the first thing I do. Name my company, figure out my entity type, get liability insurance. Then I would work on these things. Okay. So the next part that you want to think about is quality clinical care. How are you ensuring the best quality clinical care for your clients? Are you in supervision? Do you have a paid supervisor? If you don't have a paid supervisor, are you utilizing peer supervision? Can you access a peer supervision group and meet weekly? I'm part of a peer supervision group that's been meeting for 5 years, and we've seen each other through all sorts of ups and downs, and we've all grown our practices tremendously. 3 of the 4 of us have grown into large group private practices. So peer supervision groups, I think, are undervalued. They're amazing and they're so useful. And we all pool different information into these groups, and it's very helpful. So quality clinical care, are you in supervision? If not, peer supervision. And then how are you accessing continued education? Are you attending trainings or trainings available to you? How are you ensuring that you get CEUs? You want to think about those things, okay? And then the one thing that you can kind of do to help benefit yourself in all of these ways and more is think about networking. Networking ensures your growth, right? And I think we all I think most people who go into this field, who go into the mental health and helping field, are not in it because we love, being social butterflies, right? Like we care deeply about people. We usually have deep emotions. We're usually very thoughtful and sometimes very sensitive people. And we're not the people who run around, just freely chatting up everybody we see. For the most part, some of us are, but most of us aren't. So you have to think about networking as a key component of the work that you do, right? And networking is going to help you with so many things. Yvette says she is. I know, Yvette, I have seen you on social media, and you definitely are that person who's talking everybody up, and it's great. So when you think about your networking, right, you want to think about talking to other therapists. You want to think about joining therapist communities, whether they're online or in person, right? Are you a part of, say, the National Association of Social Workers? Do you attend any member events ever? Do you attend online events? Are you a part of these groups on Facebook or in other online communities where you can just chime in and talk to people once in a while and stay connected? It's so important that you become a part of a group, of a collective, and that you participate in communicating with others. in your field. That's going to help you so much throughout your career in so many ways in general, but also in terms of developing your private practice. You don't want to practice alone and be completely isolated, because that's when the growth stops, right? You want the growth, your growth, to continue. You want to continue to expand and stretch. You want to hear what other people have to say and how they're doing these things. So I highly suggest networking, okay, as one piece that you can do to grow in so many different ways. So I have a couple minutes left, and I did want to make some time for questions, comments. Does anyone have any questions about any of this? Okay, so.
I have a question, Amira.
Yeah.
It's Angelica. Would this also be something I know was thinking about, like the importance of like groups, especially around the community, and especially because we've been living in like the times that we're living in, just like source of support. Would that work the same for groups, or is it a whole different aspect of like, the billing stuff, and whether it's in person, whether it's virtual?
Right. So are you talking about like clinical groups, like say
Yes.
a 10-week group? It absolutely would work the same for groups. Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
So you would still need to cover all of those components and ideally be involved the same way. The only thing that would really be different, obviously, is like your communication with the clients might change a little bit in some ways, at least in the group, and your billing. If you're doing billing through an electronic system, then your billing codes would be group billing codes as opposed to other billing codes.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you, Angelica. It was really helpful to everyone. And if anybody has any more questions, now we have about 2 more minutes. But if not, I appreciate each of you, and I'll send you some additional information. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email. And it looks like, Angelica, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say thanks. This is
You're so welcome.
Super cool and helpful. Like, seriously, thank you so much for doing this for us. I appreciate you very much.
You are so welcome, Angelica. My pleasure. All right, terrific, everyone. So have a great day, and we'll talk soon.
Take care, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.